Dana Zelenakis, or as I call you, Zuki. Does anybody else call you Zuki?
No, you're the one and only.
Where did that come from, you think?
Well, Phil Natowich might call me Zuki once in a while, but I don't know where that came from. You came up with that back in the days when we used to work for the state, I think.
I was just going to say, we probably should say a little something about that. You and I go back a long time. I was a sidecar to your very excellent football play your senior year, my sophomore year when that ball club won the state championship. But you and I also worked together summers for the Vermont State Highway Department, tarring roads. So.
That's right, yeah. So riding in the back of the truck, I don't know, Zuki came out somewhere and it stuck. So
all right, you're gonna be Zuki for this interview.
Okay, I'm Zuki.
I hope you don't mind.
A lot of people call me Zeke, but back when I was younger, they used to call me Little Zeke because my brother was 5 years older. His name was Zeke and nickname. So yeah, but Zuki is a one and only for you.
Well, we're here to talk about ski jumping today. I don't know if you're most famous for that or not. Would you say you are? That people know you as a former ski jumper or something else?
No, I think, I think I get recognized more for my accomplishments in ski jumping, but I don't know why they feel that way, but I guess that's where I stand out.
Well, they are considerable.
Mainly because I've been involved in the sport. I just didn't jump back in the 60s and 70s and then let it go and disappear from the sport. I've been involved with ski jumping since I was 7 years old and to this day. So I've got 60 plus years involved in ski jumping. So I never left the sport.
Brattleboro, when you were 6, 7 years old and began to ski jump, was a ski jumping town. It may have been the preeminent ski jumping town in the state of Vermont. What do you think?
Yeah, it was. Not only in the state of Vermont, but pretty much in New England, with the exception of Lake Placid, which isn't New England, but New York. But yeah, we had, I would say we probably had 70, 80 kids jumping. And we learned at the park, the Memorial Park. And we'd have to, there would be like 4 or 5 coaches, Franny Bement, Tink Austin, Alan Sargent, so Phil Dunham, a bunch of them, and they would have notepads, and we wore numbers, and that's the only way they could keep track of us because each coach had 10 or 12 kids that they were watching, and I'm not sure how much coaching they actually did. They just, I can remember asking Alan Sargent, what do I have to do? And he says, jump harder, lean more. So,
not too scientific.
Not too scientific back then, but that was a start.
So how did you get started? I mean, did you sign up with the recreation department like it happens today? It was a program in the recreation department?
Well, no, it was through the outing club, from the Brattleboro Outing Club. Yeah, and they were advertising on the radio one night, and my dad asked me if I wanted to do that, and I already knew how to ski. I took lessons at the park when I was in grade school, and so I said, sure, I'll try it out, and that's how it started, and been involved with it ever since.
Well, let's trace that a little bit. You were a youth, as you said, 7 years old, and 8, 9, 10, 11. How about in elementary school? Did you continue to jump there? Was a program there?
Well, it was through the outing club. There wasn't a school program, although there was ski jumping. It was in the skiing sport in high school. We had it on our ski team. We had ski jumping, so I did that. But it was primarily through the outing club, and every weekend there would be a tournament somewhere: Lake Placid, Salisbury, Connecticut, up in Guilford, New Hampshire,
down in New York too.
Bear Mountain, New York.
Mountain,
yeah. So every weekend they would take us, and they had different classes, junior 4, 5, 3, 2, 1 up through, and we just that was it. It wasn't through the rec department or anything. It was through the outing club and the USSA ski jumping, or USSA Nordic, or whatever they call it.
All right, so you said you were jumping for the first time over at Memorial Park. You want to tell folks where the jump was?
Yeah, well, the jump was up by the upper softball field at Memorial Park.
First baseline?
First, right behind, actually, between home plate and first base is where the outrun came out. In fact, they had to remove part of the fencing every winter for us to ski there. So back in the day when I was a little kid ski jumping, there was actually 2 jumps there. There was one when I was jumping, and then they added another one later, which is now being rebuilt again. So at some point, when I came back from Minnesota to Brattleboro in 1979, part of the reason for coming back was that they wanted me to coach in the school, and they wanted me to coach the junior jumping program. And so when I came back, Andy Natowich, who you know pretty well,
brings a smile to your face.
Both of us. He put a good plug in for me to get a job here teaching. I had a teaching certificate. I was teaching out in Minnesota. And he put a plug in for me to get the job here. And I did. And so I started coaching the junior jumping program in '79 and did that through, I don't know, probably 1990. Tyke Weed and I rebuilt that jump at the park. We actually put a tower up, the 2 of us, with chainsaws and hammers and nails, and that was the jump I used to coach the kids that I had when I was coaching. And now they finally, when I got done coaching, Bernie Wells took over for a while, and Stubby Squires, they had kids in the program. And, then their kids got done and they quit, and the program pretty much died. And it has been, we haven't had a junior jumping program for a long time. And just
over 25 years.
And just recently, Todd Einig, who was one of my students, or one of my kids that I coached, has gotten involved with the Harris Hill program, and he decided he's got a kid that he got involved with ski jumping, and so he's starting this junior jumping program up again. And they've raised a bunch of money, and they're rebuilding that jump at the park.
Same location?
Same location, yeah. And it's going to be a nice jump. Unlike what Tyke and I did with logs and trees, and they hired Ian Clues and his crew to actually build the thing properly. So hopefully that junior jumping program will get going again. And I think that's going to determine the success of Harris Hill, because for a long time we had no parents to help out. When I was growing up, that whole hill, Harris Hill, got put in shape by people, not by machines like they use now. We didn't have snowmaking. We didn't have piston bullies to winch cats to groom the hill, and so you needed a lot of people. And back then, because we had a junior jumping program, we had kids that, in the program that would pack, and parents that would help shovel and stuff. So
let's tell people a little bit about how you guys, I used to watch you. I wasn't a skier. But I used to watch you. You guys would pack that hill by working your way up with your skis.
Right,
All the
yeah.
way up the, yeah.
And then back then, you could do that with, because the hills weren't really hard. We didn't use man-made snow, which basically, once it's groomed, turns into solid ice. Natural snow stays soft pretty much, and you could pack with the skis. Plus, the skis that we used back in our day were much heavier, narrower, shorter than the skis they use today. The skis probably, one of our skis weighed twice as much as both their skis today. So, yeah, it was easier and with the kids. And that's what we did. We packed those hills, put them in shape. Even when I was on the U.S. ski team and we'd travel around to hills, we would put the hills in shape. This was before groomers, and we would have to work a few days, the ski team, to get the hill in shape so we could train and ski. So,
Well, let's go back to when you were in high school. You've let us know that more or less every weekend you were traveling someplace with the Brattleboro Outing Club
right.
to ski jump.
Yeah.
And sometimes right here too, of course. But when you got to high school, you were on a high school team. That wasn't operated by the Brattleboro Outing Club.
Right.
So where did you practice your jumping then? Still at Memorial Park or?
Right over here at Latches ski jump, because most of the
Now what was that?
and actually at Harris Hill too, because back in that day we'd have that hill open all the time. You could ski anytime you want as long as the hill was in shape. And I can remember coming back one time from Minnesota when I lived out there, and I came back and my dad and I went up and I packed that whole hill to take 3 jumps on it. Packed it up, you know, that's the way you skied back then. It didn't have to be perfect. And but we skied for high school, we skied mostly on 30-meter hills or smaller. And the Latches ski jump, which is over by exit 1.
Still there?
No, it's gone. It's gone. And we tried
Now
to
the highway was here during your school days, so how did you get to it? Where exactly?
If you get off exit 1 and there's just up heading toward Guilford, there's a road on the right and a little dirt road that went out to the jump.
Now, how did you guys get over there to practice? Did you walk over from here at the Union High School?
That's a good question. I don't remember back that far.
I remember, okay.
Yeah. I don't think we, most of everybody that was on the high school team was on the outing club, or in the outing club program. And we all worked together and all, so I can't remember back when, when we practiced, if we did practice, we skied so much all the time.
So that was a 30-meter hill.
That was a
over
30,
there.
yeah, it Latches.
So at some point you had to decide, I'm going to continue with this, and I'm going off the big baby,
Yeah.
Harris Hill.
Well, yeah, back in the day, the outing club and basically Alan Sargent, he was the head of the junior jumping program. And every year we would have Christmas camps and a camp, different camps throughout the winter where we would be at the park, go over to Latches and jump. The kids that were ready to move on to the next larger hill would move over to Latches.
Who determined that, Zuki? Did somebody come and say to you, a coach say,
Yeah, a coach.
We think you're ready.
Right.
Or did you go and say, I'm ready to go over there? It's quite a jump.
It's a huge jump. It's a huge jump to go from the park to Latches, and it was a bigger step to go to Harris Hill. I can't remember. I'm sure, you had to have a coach's okay to go. So I can't remember if I said, I want to go over and try it, or they said, you're ready to go, let's go on over. So
you remember the feel in your tummy?
Yeah, scared stiff, yeah.
As you got ready to do that
Right.
first jump over there?
It happened a few times throughout my career. I can recall. First time I went ski flying at Copper Peak out in Michigan. You'd take an elevator up to the top, up to the 2/3 of the way up and then walk up the other way. The tower was 280 feet tall. And I can remember coming out of the elevator, and that's where you could jump 500 feet. And that was a scary.
What was the size of that jump, Zuki?
Well, it's considered a ski flying hill, so it's like it's a small ski flying hill, but it was like a 200 meter or whatever.
And Harris Hill is?
A 90 meter.
90 meter. And this was
Twice,
200.
Yeah. Over twice as big.
You got to be a little crazy to be a ski jumper.
Yeah, probably.
You're a little bit nuts, aren't you?
Yeah, a few bumps on the head. Yeah, right. So
yeah. You did have some horrific
falls. I did.
Yeah.
I ended up in the hospital 3 times that I recall. When I woke up in the hospital, 3 concussions, and once was at Lake Placid when we were still in high school. They had a summer jump on the 4th of July, and it was my last jump, and I don't know what happened, but I did end up in the hospital there. And another time was in Rosendale, New York, and that was in a jump off, or a long distance jump, which was kind of cool because I had already won the tournament, but it was a lot of ice that day, and something happened, I fell. And then another time was in Berlin, New Hampshire, at that ski jump up there.
You got a little bit of a reputation as like Crash Zelenakis.
Yeah. One of the things I was a little disappointed in the coaching. Coaching, even today, they spend a lot of time on takeoff. And I think today they spend a lot more time on air flight because it's more flying today than it was back then. But they don't spend a lot of time on landing. And I had a problem with landing. I had a tight landing, and it was easy to catch an edge or whatever. Plus,
what does that mean, Zuki, for people that wouldn't know, a tight landing?
Well, the proper landing for a ski jumper is called a telemark landing, where one foot's ahead of the other. And it should be like shoulder width apart. And I always was my skis were real tight together. My feet were close together. And it was easy to catch an edge and go down. Plus, I drifted to the left a lot. So one of the things that I was, if you ask old timers, where I always landed on the left-hand side of the hill, drifted. In fact, at Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Keith Zulke, who was an old ski jumper and became an announcer, and there was a creek at the bottom that ran along the left-hand side of the outrun. And one time I went down and I drifted way far left, and I went right into the creek, completely underwater. And so they named it Zeke's Creek. So yeah, those are the things about it.
Let's go back to high school again. Your jumping team, the Nordic jumping team, Brattleboro was a consistent contender for state championship in skiing, Nordic skiing.
Right.
How successful was your jumping team and yourself personally on that jumping team?
I think we probably finished as a team first almost every time, primarily because we were all members of the Brattleboro Outing Club, and that jumping organization, gave us a lot more practice and training, and we were a lot more into ski jumping than just Springfield High School or some of these other high schools around, Bellows Falls, I don't know who they were, that would be in the competition. So a lot of times these schools would have people jumping with alpine skis, they just to fill a team. Whereas we had actual guys that's what their specialty was, ski jumping. Dave Harris, Bill Flood, Dave Merrill, Eric Merrill. We had good jumpers. And
you mentioned a couple of pretty good athletes there,
too. Yeah. So, and there were a lot of others, too, that came along that I can't, but those are the ones I remember being on our jumping team. I don't think I'm not sure if I ever won a actual jumping competition. I think I did at Putney School once. I don't know what they call it. It wasn't a state champion division or
Southern Vermont.
Southern Vermont region, yeah, whatever. But
so after high school, what, Zuki? You did.
okay, so here's how it evolved. After high school, I was applying to different schools to go to college, and one of the schools I was accepted at, and I had actually paid money to, was the University of Wyoming, and I wasn't thinking about sports then, really. I had played football, but I wasn't, and I jumped. But anyway, what happened in that summer, after I'd already paid my registration fee out there and everything, Roger Dion, who the Dion family is a famous family in ski jumping, Roger came down to my house sometime in the summertime and made a pitch to my parents that they would give me a full scholarship at this college up in New Hampshire, Canaan College, which was a small private liberal arts college. And somehow Roger convinced the president and the powers to be in that college that we could help get a name for the college by having a good ski team. So he recruited a bunch of guys to be on the ski team, alpine, cross country, and ski jumping. And so it was a full scholarship. My parents just jumped on that like rat on cheese, man. And so that's how I ended up going to Canaan College, and that's really where my ski jumping career blossomed, because I really didn't have an intention on continuing with ski jumping. But anyway, Roger was an excellent coach. He probably is the main reason why I got to where I am. But we would travel around with a team. We'd come down to Brattleboro and practice during the week.
Did you have a ski jump at the school?
We didn't have one at school, but in Lebanon. It was near Lebanon, so we would go over and practice. That's where we would practice most of the time.
But sometimes here too, huh?
But sometimes we would drive down here if we wanted to get on a bigger hill. Plus, we went every weekend to all the USSA tournaments all around the East. In fact, one time we took the team, we went out to Alta, Utah. We were going to Winter Park to train in November, and they didn't have any snow, so they moved the training camp to Alta, Utah, and we went out there. Drove all the way out with a trailer behind a car. It was quite the thing. But yeah, so that's how I really got into doing well. And making the Olympic team was, that's a highlight of my career to do that.
Make sure
but
folks understand how that works. How do you get on the Olympic team?
Well, you compete in various tryouts. So in 1968, when I was still in college, the 1968 Olympic tryouts, there was a tryout at Lake Placid, New York, and then a tryout at Iron Mountain, Michigan. And I skied, I got, I think, 9th place at Lake Placid in the Olympic tryouts. And so because of that, the U.S. ski team picked me up and said, we'll pay for you to go to Iron Mountain, Michigan, to be in the second tryout, which was, the only way I could have gotten out there, really. I don't know, maybe the school would have sent me out there, but this was in 1968, and so I went out to Iron Mountain, and I got 5th place in the tryouts. And this was Olympic tryouts.
Yeah, these are kids from all over the country.
These are kids from all over the country, and the best in the country. And so when I did that, I didn't get picked for the team. Jay Rand from Lake Placid made the team.
I remember that.
And a bunch of other guys from the Midwest. But, I got picked up to be put on the U.S. ski team at that point. On the I think it was the A team, I'm not sure. And so by doing that, you get to travel with the team. They pay your room and pay for your airfare and stuff. And back in those days, and that's how it developed. So then when I graduated in 1970 from college, I got drafted into the military, and I was stationed in Denver, Colorado. And the Nordic program director, Jim Balfance, was really good buddies with the governor of Colorado, and the governor of Colorado was on the head of the Armed Services Committee. So he was able to, I got picked up to be on the U.S. ski team, and he was able to get orders deferred. Get me put on TDY, temporary duty, so that I could travel with the ski team during the winter and train with them. And so that's how I was on the U.S. ski team, traveling around. We'd have training camps in Banff, Canada, at Winter Park, Colorado, all over the place. And back in those days, we didn't have plastic hills, so there was the training in the summertime was running and doing, strengthening exercise and things like that. But it wasn't ski jumping. And then, by getting, I had orders a few times for Vietnam and Guam, got those changed, which they weren't happy about, but, and I have mixed feelings about that. I mean, I see guys that went to Vietnam and didn't make it back, and, but on the other hand, it kept me safe, and for the most part, when I wasn't ski jumping. So that's how it all evolved. So again,
next Olympic
the
is
next
72.
Next Olympics was 72, and we had 3 tryouts. Had a tryout in Westby, Wisconsin, one in Iron Mountain, Michigan, and one in Leavenworth, Washington. And I didn't win any of them. I didn't come in second in any of them, but I finished in the top 5 in every one of them.
How many Olympic ski jumpers does the United States send to the Olympics?
They take 5. Well, they did then. And to be honest, today I could probably not even make an Olympic team. Today you have to have World Cup. They didn't have World Cup jumping back then. We had international jumping, but they didn't call it World Cup. They didn't award points. Anybody that was brought over by a country could jump, and it all got changed when Eddie the Eagle in Calgary from Britain, kind of made a farce of the sport. And that's when they said, okay, we're going to change the rules of how you can be an Olympian. And today, in order to be an Olympian, you have to have earned so many World Cup points. And to get World Cup points, you start with a jump like Brattleboro, where they have a FIS tournament, and that's the lowest level, and you earn some points, and then you can go to the Continental Cup, which is the next level of competition. And if you have to get so many points to get on the World Cup team. Right now, I think there's only 2 guys that qualify for jumping on an Olympic team from the United States. So things have changed a lot, and to be honest, I probably wouldn't have aimed. But back then, they took 5 guys.
So you went to Sapporo, Japan?
So I went to Sapporo, Japan, and we started training there. And my goal was to make an Olympic team, and throughout the tryouts, I was just focused on that. Skied pretty well, finished in the top four. And they took Greg Swore as an alternate because the year before he was really hot, but he wasn't jumping well that year. But they took him as the fifth guy. But when we got over there, we started training on the hills, and Greg started jumping better than I did. And so I didn't actually compete. I trained every day right up to the jump, but they had to pick four guys, and I was the fifth. I was the fifth one.
Yeah.
Which is it's kind of really disappointing, but I guess I did accomplish one of my goals, and that was to make a team. So.
Now, earlier you said that wasn't it for you. I mean, time to retire. I'm 24 years old or so.
Yeah.
How long do most people stay with ski jumping?
Well, today, most people stay in the sport until their late 20s, maybe 30.
But you didn't pack it up. You continued to ski jump.
Yeah, I ski jumped. I got out of the service in 1973, and I still wanted to jump, and I knew where all the big competitions were in the Midwest. So I had my wife, I said, we're going to Minnesota. And she was a teacher. And so she said, no problem, I'll get a teaching job there. And so we packed up, went to Minnesota, got an apartment out there. I got a job with a guy, Control Data Corporation, which made... back in those days, computer, whatever you call them, drives. And the guy that was the head honcho of that corporation was George Wright, and his son was Jeff Wright, who was an excellent ski jumper on the U.S. ski team, which is a dark part in our sport, he got killed here in Brattleboro. And, I was working for his dad when that happened. But I went to Minnesota.
Was that jumping, Suki?
Yeah. At Brattleboro.
I vaguely remember that, but I couldn't have told you who it was.
Yeah, well, yeah. A lot of us could have predicted he would get hurt seriously at some point because he always landed with his head down. And I wasn't here. I was out in Minnesota. But the hill was very hard that day, and that's what happened. He went down head first and never came out of it, which is a sad thing. But anyway, I stayed in Minnesota and continued to jump for the Minneapolis ski club, and that's where I stayed until it got so cold out there in while I was there, I was working for this computer company, and then I decided, my wife was a teacher, I had the GI Bill, I said I'm going to go back to school and get a teaching degree and be able to teach. So I went back to the University of Minnesota for a couple of years. Got a minor in coaching because in order to coach in Minnesota, you have to have a minor in phys ed. So I got that, and I coached and taught in Minnesota. And then we decided it was getting too cold out there, and we coming back, and that's when...
You came back here. Here we are on a 5-degree day.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Well, it was like this for a lot of the winter out there. In fact, if it was 5 degrees, it was you considered it a heat wave. But yeah, so at some point, someone, I think it was David Neumeister, called me or sent me a letter asking if I had any interest in coming back to Brattleboro and coaching. And I think that got the ball rolling to move back to Vermont. And again, Andy Netowich kind of put a good word in for me, and I got a job here at the school. And that's the way it went. And I continued to ski. I did retire for a few years. I didn't jump. And then Tyke Weed, Walker Weed is his real name, but he and I kind of really kept Harris Hill going. You know, he and I together would go over there and rebuild steps and mow and cut down, did all that stuff, which today they hire out to do. But and then Tyke ended up moving out to Montana, and I got Kevin Whitworth to help me. And so the two of us would go over there and build stairs and try to keep the place.
Do you think, Zuki, if you said possibly the program in town is rebuilding now a little bit, if it got back to 70 or 80 kids again and that kind of interest in it and parental interest, it could ever revert back to being cared for by private individuals instead of being hired out? I could tell by your face you're not too keen on that.
Yeah, well, I don't know that we could ever get to that point again, because ski jumping today is really a lot more technical than it was back in our day. The requirements, the specifications for everything are really tight.
Safety.
Like back in our day, you packed the hill and you'd ski it. And the track, you would just ski a track in. One after another would follow the same track until you got a track deep enough to follow. And if it was icy, sometimes there would be no track. But today, they have to have a track. It's set with a machine.
To begin with.
Before anybody jumps. And the landing hill can't be natural. The whole thing can't be natural snow. It has to be man-made snow, because it has to be hard and it has to be ice. So there's no way that it could be done by like it was in the old days. When we needed snow on the hill, we would get coal chutes and they'd bring dump trucks up to the knoll and we'd shovel them down. On the in-run, you'd carry sacks of snow up. You can't do that anymore. So it's a different ball game altogether today than it was back then. But and I can't foresee that ski jumping we ever get 70 guys or 70 kids involved in the sport again. There's just too many other sports that are a lot bigger. Basketball in the wintertime. My grandson even now is in a baseball camp already. So it's ski jumping's a sport that is unique, and not a lot of people do it.
Zuki, a couple more things. One is for the conditions to be perfect for Harris Hill this year, what would they be like? What are the absolute optimum conditions for the ski jumpers to come in here and say, God, it was perfect?
About 25 degrees, bluebird day, nothing but sunshine, but no wind, no sun on the hill really, just a nice bright day.
Is that one of the advantages of Harris Hill? As the day goes on, the sun has gone off it.
Right, yeah. And one of the advantages of Harris Hill is it's cut into the pretty thick set of trees all the way. As opposed to in the Midwest, where jumps are just stuck out in the middle of nowhere in the wide open. So very seldom does our tournament ever, in fact, I can't ever remember it getting canceled because of wind. Whereas out in the Midwest, a lot of times they would cancel a tournament or get delayed or whatever because of wind. And so that's one of the advantages. And up until 2000, I think it was 2000, I'm not even sure, 2005 when they rebuilt our hill. It was all pretty much natural in-run. Now it's a tower. But, yeah, at 25 degrees and sunshine would be a perfect day because it's nice for the crowd. The sun gets off the hill, so ski jumping, the hill stays hard, and it's great for jumping, whereas the crowd out in the outrun is still in the sun, and you get a great crowd, so it's the ideal thing for everybody.
How are the crowds here compared to the rest of the country and even overseas where you've jumped?
Well, compared to overseas, there's no comparison. They will have 100,000 people come and watch. If you right now on the Olympic Channel on TV, you can watch the ski jumping from over there, and they have 100,000 people at these. They have stadiums and the whole bit. It's like football here. Those guys that are winning the top 10 are heroes in their country. And but here we draw a good crowd, and we've always had a pretty good crowd. But in the last 10 or 15 years, when we've really built the tournament up as more than just a ski jumping tournament, but a kind of a festival atmosphere, music, lots of vendors. It's been awesome. We've had good crowds. But the one thing that determines the crowd is the weather. And if it's going to be a sunny day and 25 degrees or warmer, then you're going to have a huge crowd. If you have a tournament and it's going to be 5 degrees out and cloudy, you won't get much of a crowd. Because people really don't know the sport. So a lot of people go because it's exciting, it's thrilling, it's daredevil kind of skiing, when in actuality it's really a safe sport. You don't hear too many crashes anymore. The sport has changed because of the equipment. Everybody wears helmets. Helmets have to be certified. They can't be just a helmet you buy down at Burroughs Sports Shop. It has to be have a special sticker on it, tested. Back in my day, I never even, a lot of times didn't even wear a hat. I don't have it with me, but I have a picture of the 68 tryouts when I got 5th place out there at Iron Mountain, which was on a hill twice as big as Brattleboro, that I didn't even have a hat on that day. So.
Do ski jumpers from other places enjoy coming here? Do they look forward to coming here, or is it just another stop that they?
No, I think Brattleboro does a great job with the people coming in. We bring a lot of Europeans over here. They always have a great time. We take good care of them.
And what does that mean? You bring them over here. How does that work?
Well, we contact.
You send invitations?
Yeah, we send out invitations. We contact. It depends on what the tournament is. If it's just like this year, it's a regular tournament. So we will contact probably Slovenia, Norway, some of the, maybe Finland or some other, and say, we'll bring over, we'll pay to have 2 or 3 of your skiers come. And we don't get the World Cup team. We'll get second team members, but they're all excellent jumpers, and we've had jumpers from Turkey, Slovenia. We always bring the Slovenians over. They're great.
Good people, you mean, or great ski jumpers?
They're great ski jumpers, and they're great people. They're very appreciative of what we do, and we've made good friendships with those people over there. But if it's an FIS tournament, which I think they're gonna have one next year, then you're required to have 7 nations represented. So you
probably should tell people what FIS is. You've used it.
Well, FIS is the Federation. It stands for Federation International Day Ski. It's the international organizing committee of skiing sport. It's not just ski jumping, it's skiing altogether. So, and the tournaments are like the World Cup tournaments. They have a FIS bottom line tournament where kids can earn points to move to the next level, which is Continental Cup. And then from the Continental Cup, it goes to World Cup. And those events are fun to watch because they'll take jumpers from every country that have World Cup points, and they have 50 guys jump. And no, they might have more than 50 guys, but only the top 50 go to the next round, and they pair them up. So whoever in the trial jump, or the elimination, I call it, jump, they will take the top 50. And so then the next round, they'll pair number 1 against number 50, and they'll have a jump. And it doesn't matter how they do against everybody else, it's those two. So one guy will come out on top, he goes to the next round, the other guy is eliminated. So in the final...
High pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, so in the final round, you've got 25 jumpers, but they also take, they call it the lucky losers. So if I were jumping against you and you won, and I got eliminated, but my points were higher than, they would take they call them the 5 lucky losers. So at the end, you have 30 jumpers competing in the final round, and they take the 30th jumper goes first, all the way down to the best jumper. And it's fun to watch because it's I'd like to see them do it here in Brattleboro, but the problem is we usually don't have enough skiers to do that. Mm-hmm. So.
Did you have a nemesis?
Did I have
Somebody
a nemesis?
Somebody you really liked to beat, or was tough to beat, or you got him sometimes but not other times, or he's here, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, we were all kind of a real close family, and so I was competing against always the top, like not always, but in the last 4 or 5 years of my career when I made the Olympic team and stuff, and traveling with the U.S. ski team, I was always competing against the same guys that would always finish either ahead of me or behind me. So there weren't any that I didn't really have a nemesis. You know, I always wanted to. Jerry Martin was always the kind of premier jumper back in my day.
Stick? Yeah.
He was my roommate in the Sapporo, and in fact, the Martin family is what took care of us when we moved to Minnesota. They let us, when we were interviewing and stuff, we'd travel there and stay with them. But no, the only guy that I guess I wanted to stay ahead of was Bruce Jennings from Lebanon, and he actually finished. He finished 5th overall in the Olympic tryouts and didn't make it, and I kind of felt bad for him. But
is he still around? You ever see him?
Yeah, oh yeah, actually, he and I both got inducted into the Ski Jumping Hall of Fame at the same time.
Bravo.
A few years ago in Redwood, Minnesota, and.
That's great.
So yeah, he's still around, and we get together, and he'll be down here this year. He, comes down. So.
On the way in, Zuki, I asked you about trophies.
Yeah.
And well, you tell people what your answer was. What have you done with your trophies?
Well, most of the trophies that I won, I took the plates off them and gave them to my junior jumpers when I was coaching junior jumping, and we'd have a little tournament, and I'd use those trophies to kind of, they were, they liked it, and they gave them something. So that, yeah. But I really didn't win that many trophies. I never was in the. I always come in second, third, fourth, whatever, and I didn't get any big trophies. I remember I got one little trophy like that for getting fourth place in the Olympic tryouts. And I didn't even bring it. But the things that I'm most proud of is not my jumping per se, but what I've done with ski jumping and my involvement with the sport, my coaching the juniors, I took over being the director of the Harris Hill Ski Jump in 1984, I think it was, and did that till 1993, when it was about to, it was really hurting back then. We had a couple of years that they didn't have snow and they didn't try to have a tournament. And so those are the things. And in fact, I've stayed involved in the sport. I'm not on the Harris Hill committee anymore, but I still go out there the week before and help them shovel snow and get the hill ready, work on the in-run. And then during the tournament, my wife and I and Sally Seymour do the scoring. So I stay involved in the sport, just not. I'm not in charge, which is a great thing.
Anything you'd like to add, Zuki? Something I haven't asked, or you said, geez, he's certainly going to ask about this. Have we missed anything?
Actually, you pretty much covered it. One of the things I wanted to clarify was my involvement with the Olympics. I made the team, but I didn't get to compete. And I don't have a lot of trophies to show, but those aren't the important things to me anyway. It's the certificates of appreciation and stuff that I've earned.
And being put into the Hall of Fame,
being involved.
That's a great accomplishment, Zuki.
Yeah. So that's about it.
All right.
Seems like I've told my story.
Thank you, Zuki.
Thank you, Bill.
Much appreciated.
Appreciate it. Yeah.